The crowded school hallway buzzed with voices as lockers clanged and students hurried to class, carrying heavy backpacks and colorful folders under fluorescent lights that flickered above their heads with a steady hum. Bright posters announcing the spring concert and the upcoming science fair lined the walls, while scattered pieces of chalk dust sparkled on the floor near the art classroom door that stood slightly ajar. A group of friends laughed softly in the corner, swapping stories about last night's homework assignment and the funny video one of them had shared in the group chat just before school started. At the far end of the hallway, Derek towered over smaller students with a grin that turned mean whenever he saw someone who looked nervous or shy walking alone toward the door. He spotted Jasmine standing by her locker with her books neatly stacked on the floor, her black hair pulled back into a ponytail that bounced gently as she reached for her notebook. Jasmine was new to Northside Middle School, and she still felt her heart pound every time she walked into a crowded hallway that smelled like sneakers and cafeteria pizza. Derek's older brother had warned him about the new girl, so Derek thought it would be funny to scare her on his first day after spring break when everyone's guard was down. As Jasmine snapped her locker shut, Derek took a slow step forward and bumped into her with his shoulder, sending her books tumbling across the floor in a noisy crash. Jasmine gasped and bent to pick them up, her sweatshirt sliding a little on her shoulder, and she snapped her binder closed with a quiet click as she stood back up. Derek reached out quickly and yanked her backpack off her shoulders, swinging it like a prize in front of his chest while students in the hallway paused to watch. His laughter echoed off the lockers as he held the backpack high, casting a long shadow on the floor that made Jasmine's stomach twist into tight knots. Jasmine felt her cheeks flush red, not because she was afraid, but because she hated feeling helpless when someone was trying to make her feel small. With her free hand, she smoothed down the front of her jeans and took a steady breath in through her nose, counting silently to 3 before she spoke. "Give it back," she said in a calm voice that surprised even her, because her chest felt strong and steady, not shaky or scared. Derek's grin faltered for a split second before he sneered, "Make me, new girl," and held the backpack just out of her reach with one crooked finger lifting the strap. A few students whispered to each other, wondering if Jasmine would cry or scream, but she just stood there, her eyes steady and focused, refusing to look away. The bell at the end of the hallway began to ring, its sharp clang echoing through the corridor and sending students shuffling toward their classes in a sudden rush of motion. Derek huffed and started to tuck the backpack under his arm like a trophy, but before he could turn away, Jasmine took one confident step forward. With surprising speed, she reached out and yanked the backpack back from him, pulling it close to her chest as her braid swung like a tail behind her. Derek's jaw dropped in shock, his eyes wide as plates, because he had never met anyone who stood up to him so quickly or with such calm strength. Jasmine closed her fingers around the straps and gave him a small, polite nod, as if she were returning a lost pencil instead of standing up for herself against a bully. The hallway fell silent for a moment, broken only by the distant squeak of sneakers and the fading echo of the bell as more students hurried past. Derek took a step back, his bravado slipping away like water through a stone, and his cheeks turned pink under the harsh hallway lights where no one could hide. Jasmine turned sideways, resting the backpack on one hip, and simply said, "Let's not do that again," in a quiet voice that carried clear across the space between them. Derek opened his mouth to say something mean but found that no words came out, so he just looked at the floor and kicked at a loose piece of chalk on the tile. A teacher rounded the corner at that moment, her clipboard held high, and her glasses perched on the tip of her nose as she glanced from Derek to Jasmine. Derek's friends moved closer, eager to see what would happen, but they hesitated when they noticed how calm Jasmine looked and how uneasy Derek suddenly appeared. The teacher cleared her throat softly and asked, "Is everything all right here?" Her voice firm but kind, as if she expected a quick answer and no trouble. Jasmine straightened up, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips, and held out the backpack toward Derek without saying another word. Derek stared at the backpack, then at Jasmine's hand, and finally pushed it away from him with a soft thud that sounded louder than a yell in the quiet hallway. He mumbled thanks, so low that the teacher had to lean forward to hear him, his usual swagger completely gone in those few seconds. Jasmine nodded again and slid the backpack onto her shoulder before she stepped around Derek as if she were passing him on a garden path instead of a school hallway. The teacher watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the tiles, and then turned back to Derek with a raised eyebrow that asked more questions than words could say. Derek shrugged his shoulders and looked away, running one hand through his hair as if trying to understand how someone could refuse to be scared. Behind him, his friends gave him odd looks, like they were seeing a stranger in his own skin for the first time that morning. Derek's heart pounded inside his chest, not with excitement or anger, but with a new feeling he didn't recognize, respect, mixed with confusion, tossed together like chalk dust. Jasmine rounded the corner just in time to catch a glimpse of sunlight streaming through the windows by the exit, painting bright lines on the floor. She walked toward the light, her steps steady and unhurried, as if she knew she had done the right thing and nothing could change that truth. 10 seconds had passed since the bully first touched her backpack, and in that brief moment, everything had shifted, changing how Derek would think about her from now on. As Jasmine disappeared around the corner, Derek realized he had picked on the wrong girl, a realization that felt heavy and surprising in the quiet space she left behind. Jasmine walked into her science class carrying her backpack with her head held high as the heavy door closed softly behind her, and curious students glanced up from their desks in surprise at her confident stride that filled the room with calm determination. Ms. Carter, the science teacher with kind eyes behind her glasses, smiled warmly and pointed toward an empty seat near the front where sunlight streamed through the tall windows, and Jasmine placed her bag down gently before offering a polite nod and thanks. A soft whisper ran through the rows of desks as students exchanged wide-eyed glances and hushed questions about what had happened in the hallway just moments before spring break ended. Derek slipped into the back row a few seconds later, his shoulders hunched and his usual confident swagger replaced by a slow, uncertain shuffle as he avoided meeting anyone's gaze. The classroom smelled faintly of dry erase markers mixed with the earthy scent of old textbooks stacked neatly on the shelves along the back wall under the clock that ticked evenly above them. Miss Carter cleared her throat and announced, "Open your books to Chapter 7, reminding everyone that today's pop quiz would cover the water cycle and its key stages, so pencils should be sharpened and minds focused." Jasmine turned the pages carefully, noting the colorful diagrams of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation printed in bright green and blue, and she read the small, bold questions at the end of the chapter with thoughtful concentration. Derek stared at the same diagrams but found his thoughts drifting back to the moment Jasmine had spoken up in the hallway, and he felt a confusing mix of regret and unexpected admiration stirring inside him. Marcus, who sat 2 desks to Jasmine's left and had been her friend since the first week of school, leaned over and whispered, "You were amazing back there," and Jasmine gave him a small, appreciative smile that warmed the space between them. Marcus tapped his pencil thoughtfully against his notebook and said softly, "I don't think I've ever seen anyone stand up to Derek like that," and Jasmine blushed slightly before focusing on the pop quiz questions ahead. Ms. Carter called on Marcus to read the first question aloud, and his clear, steady voice echoed through the room as he explained how the sun's heat causes water from lakes and oceans to rise into the air as vapor. Jasmine listened closely, her eyebrows lifting in interest, and she mentally paraphrased Marcus's words into simpler terms in case any classmates needed help understanding the science vocabulary. When Ms. Carter asked Jasmine to define condensation, Jasmine spoke slowly and clearly about how water vapor cools as it rises and turns into tiny droplets on cold surfaces like window panes or grass at dawn. Other students wrote Jasmine's answer in tidy cursive, glancing at her with expressions of respect and relief as they completed their own sentences and checked their spelling. The quiz ended with a question about precipitation, and Ms. Carter circled the room, tapping pencils lightly and offering encouraging words like "good work" or "nice explanation" as she passed each desk. When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, desks scraped softly on the linoleum floor as students packed up their books, notebooks, and pens into colorful backpacks that spilled onto the aisles. Jasmine closed her book carefully and lifted her backpack onto her shoulder before slipping her pencil case inside, her movements calm and precise as if she were preparing for a peaceful walk in a garden. Derek lingered by the door, watching her discreetly while waiting for the hallway to clear of most students so he could speak to her without a crowd listening. Once the corridor emptied, he approached hesitantly, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead as he cleared his throat and said in a low voice, "Hey, Jasmine, can we talk?" Jasmine turned toward him, her ponytail swinging like a pendulum, and nodded politely before gesturing toward a quieter side corridor where lockers stood in neat rows. As they stepped into the narrower hallway, the echoes of distant voices and locker doors closing became muffled, creating a private space for their unexpected conversation. Derek shifted his weight from one foot to the other and admitted softly, "I've been thinking about what you did back there, and I felt kind of terrible afterward." Jasmine listened with a calm expression, her dark eyes steady and compassionate as she waited for him to continue explaining his sudden change of heart. Derek looked down at his scuffed sneakers and said in a quieter tone, "I guess I never realized how brave you could be when someone tries to hurt you, and you just stood up without yelling or crying." Jasmine offered him a small, friendly smile and replied, "I just wanted you to know I deserve respect like anyone else, and I hope you can understand that now." Derek nodded slowly, his shoulders relaxing and a shy grin forming as he said, I do understand, and I'm sorry I made you feel scared or small. Jasmine accepted his apology with a simple, thank you, and patted the side of her backpack before turning to leave, her posture relaxed and confident. Later that morning during math class, the teacher, Mr. Lee, asked students to solve a set of problems on the board, and Jasmine volunteered correctly, earning a round of applause from her classmates. Derek sat at his desk and watched her demonstration, feeling a quiet pride swell inside him as he realized she was smart, kind, and strong all at once. At lunch in the cafeteria, Jasmine joined her friends at a round table by the windows where bright sunlight painted patterns on the floor, and they passed around sandwiches, fruit, and small cartons of milk. Derek approached the lunch line more slowly than usual, his stomach growing a bit tight as he scanned the room for an empty seat near Jasmine's table. When he finally spotted a vacant spot beside Marcus, he carried his tray over, setting it down carefully, and Marcus waved him over with a grin. Jasmine looked up and offered a polite nod of greeting, and Derek sat down feeling the weight of his earlier mistake lift away with each friendly glance he received. They talked about the pop quiz results, Marcus's weekend soccer game, and an upcoming school play, and Jasmine teased Derek gently about needing to study more before jumping to conclusions. Derek laughed, a warm, genuine sound that surprised him as much as anyone else, and he realized that laughter could feel just as powerful as fear. After lunch, they headed to art class together, where painting supplies and colorful papers awaited on long tables, and Ms. Green welcomed them with a cheerful clap of her hands. Jasmine chose a bright blue paint for her project, mixing it with white to create soft clouds on her canvas, while Derek picked green and yellow to illustrate a sunny meadow. As they painted side by side, Derek glanced at Jasmine's work and said quietly, "Your clouds look amazing," and she smiled, offering him a paintbrush to try blending shades himself. They laughed together at the paint spots on their fingers and the funny shapes their brushes made when they moved too quickly, creating memories more colorful than any locker poster. By the end of art class, the sun was low in the sky, and their paper canvases dried with bright scenes of nature, and Derek thought that standing up for someone and making a friend could be the best lesson of all. After art class ended in a bright, colorful room filled with jars of paint, stacks of sketch pads, and tall wooden easels, Jasmine and her two closest friends walked slowly down the long, tile-floored corridor toward the gymnasium for the all-school assembly, carrying their backpacks that still bore soft splatters of blue and yellow paint. The gym doors swung open with a gentle creak as they approached, revealing rows of folding chairs set neatly on the polished hardwood floor, where the school's blue and gold banners fluttered in the slight draft from the vents overhead. A crisp hush fell over the crowd of students as Principal Walters stepped onto the stage behind the long wooden podium, adjusting a microphone with a quiet click before greeting everyone with his usual warm, "Good morning, Northside Knights. Let's begin our assembly." Jasmine settled into a middle seat near her friends, Marcus and Lena, and felt the floorboards hum softly under hundreds of shifting bodies, while sunlight streamed through the tall windows and cast rectangular patches of gold onto the chairs. Derek slipped in behind her row, his shoulders tense and his usual swagger replaced by a careful shuffle, as he scanned the sea of faces until he spotted Jasmine's calm profile in the front of the crowd. The principal's voice echoed off the high ceiling as he spoke about the upcoming spring carnival, detailing games, food stands, and the student talent show, his words carrying a sense of excitement that made the crowd stir with anticipation. Jasmine leaned toward Marcus and whispered that she couldn't wait to design a few of the carnival posters, and he nodded so enthusiastically that his pencil case tumbled to the floor with a soft thud. From his seat, Derek watched Jasmine's ponytail swing gently over her shoulder as she laughed at something Lena said, and he felt a flutter of respect and surprise at how naturally she fit into the school's lively atmosphere. Far above, the gym's large scoreboard hung silent and dark, its blank digital screen waiting for the final bell to signal the start of spring basketball tryouts later that afternoon. Principal Walters paused to show a slide of the new school mascot, a knight in shining armor waving cheerfully, and the students broke into polite applause as cartoon confetti rained down around the figure. The next announcement invited any student with a talent to audition for the talent show, and Jasmine caught Derek's eye in a row behind her. He lifted an eyebrow and mouthed, "You," before looking away quickly. Jasmine smiled to herself, her heart warming at the unspoken invitation, and she wondered whether she might paint a backdrop or perhaps sing a song, though the thought made her palms sweat just a little. As the assembly ended, chairs scraped softly on the floor and students began to stand, stretching and talking quietly about who might win the talent show or how long the carnival lines would be. Jasmine gathered her art supplies into her backpack and turned to leave, but Derek stood up too, pushing past a few classmates as he made his way toward her with an uncertain grin. She stepped out of the row and met him at the aisle, her backpack straps resting lightly on her shoulders as she waited for him to speak, her face calm and open. Derek cleared his throat once, twice, and said, "Hey, Jasmine, about that talent show, would you want me to help you build the backdrop or carry supplies?" His voice softer than she'd ever heard before. Jasmine blinked in surprise, her dark eyes bright, and replied, "I would love that." Her words gentle but firm, like a promise sealed in kindness and mutual respect. Derek exhaled and offered a shy smile, rubbing the back of his neck as he said, "Great. Let's meet tomorrow after school in the art room and plan everything out." Jasmine nodded thoughtfully and said, "Sounds like a plan. See you then." Before turning down the hallway toward her next class, her steps steady and unfazed by the curious glances around her. All through the morning, Jasmine could feel the buzz of excitement in the air as teachers reminded students about sign-up sheets for the carnival, and whispers followed her through the halls whenever someone recognized her from the assembly. At lunch, she and her friends gathered at their usual round table near the windows where light danced on the tiled floor, and they passed around sandwiches, apples, and juice boxes as they talked about their plans for the art room meeting. Derek arrived at the table carrying his lunch tray with a slightly nervous smile, placing it next to Marcus before offering Jasmine a friendly wave that made her grin back at him in genuine appreciation. Lena nudged Marcus and whispered, "I never thought I'd see Derek sit so close to Jasmine and talk so respectfully," and Marcus shrugged with a small smile, clearly happy to witness the change. The cafeteria echoed with clattering trays and soft laughter as Jasmine introduced Derek as her carnival partner, and a few classmates called out congratulations from nearby tables. After lunch, the final bell rang, and students poured out into the hallways like a river of moving lockers and backpacks, with Jasmine and Derek weaving together through the crowd toward the art room. The art room door stood open, revealing the familiar sight of wooden stools, paint-spattered tables, and a gentle scent of acrylic and chalk dust that always made Jasmine feel inspired. Derek held the door for Jasmine, and they stepped inside side by side, setting their backpacks down and pulling out rolls of paper, cans of paint, and a handful of brushes in bright hues. They spread the heavy roll of white banner paper across the largest table and unrolled it carefully so the edges hung evenly on both sides without any wrinkles or folds. Jasmine sketched large letters that spelled out Spring Carnival in bubbly, playful type, while Derek picked up a ruler and helped draw straight guidelines to keep the letters neat and uniform. She added decorative flourishes like spirals and stars around the letters, and Derek filled in a series of small carnival-themed doodles, balloons, Ferris wheels, and cupcakes, with confident strokes. Every time their hands brushed on the paper, neither one flinched. Instead, they shared quick smiles that felt as bright as the banners they were creating. Miss Green walked in with a warm nod, admiring their teamwork and offering extra brushes when they realized they needed a third hand to paint the smallest details. Jasmine picked up a thin brush and carefully painted tiny dots of white on the cupcake drawings to look like sprinkles, her tongue peeking out at the corner of her mouth in concentration. Derek stood back to examine the overall effect, then dabbed a little of turquoise paint onto his brush and added shimmering highlights to the Ferris wheel's metal beams. As the banner grew more colorful by the minute, the art room's afternoon light dimmed and cast long shadows that moved across the floor like dancing ribbons of paint. When they finished the final flourish of confetti around the edges, they stepped back to admire the banner's bright rainbow of colors that stretched nearly 8 feet long in joyful celebration. Derek looked at Jasmine and said softly, "This looks amazing. Thank you for letting me help." And she smiled back, feeling her chest swell with pride at their shared creation. They rinsed their brushes in water buckets, swirling them gently. After school, Jasmine and Derek carried the banner through the halls toward the gym, where teachers waited to help hang the bright creation high above the stage under rows of lights. They followed Mr. Jefferson, the gym coordinator, as he set up a tall ladder near the stage's edge, its metal steps gleaming in the fading afternoon light. Jasmine felt her palms sweat a little as she climbed the ladder, but Derek offered his hand to steady her, his fingers brushing against hers in a quick, friendly gesture that felt warm and kind. At the top, she unrolled the banner and held it steady while Derek and Mr. Jefferson taped the ends to the stage's wooden frame, the paper crackling softly with each inch they smoothed out. A few younger students peeked through the gym's windows and waved, whispering excitedly about how beautiful the banner looked, with its rainbow of colors dancing across the stage that now felt like a bright sky. Derek leaned over the railing and gave a small thumbs up, his face lit by the stage lights that made his grin feel friendly and proud instead of teasing or mocking. Jasmine climbed down carefully, and they high-fived before Mr. Jefferson congratulated them on their work, saying, "This will make the carnival feel extra special, with an approving smile. They left the gym and walked past rows of empty chairs, their footsteps echoing softly, heading toward the cafeteria where food stands would soon be set up for the event. Outside, the courtyard lay quiet, with orange cones marking where game booths would stand, and a few teachers unloaded tables covered in red and white checkered tablecloths under the open sky. Jasmine paused at the cafeteria entrance and took a deep breath, smelling the distant scent of popcorn and cotton candy already wafting through the air from the snack stand being tested nearby. Derek nudged her and said, "Want to try a small taste of cotton candy?" Pulling a bright pink puff of sugar from a plastic bag and offering her a sticky handful on a white paper cone. Jasmine smiled and took a small bite, her teeth crunching softly as the sugar melted on her tongue, leaving behind a sweet taste that reminded her of birthday parties and summer fairs. Nearby, the school band began to tune their instruments in the corner of the cafeteria stage, the notes weaving together like a gentle breeze before a storm of song and celebration. Derek tapped his foot to the beat and said, "You play an instrument?" with genuine curiosity, and Jasmine shook her head, responding, "No, but I've always wanted to learn the piano someday." He grinned and said, "Maybe I can help you find some lessons over the summer," and she felt a flutter of excitement at the idea of learning something new with a friend's support. They joined a line of students where the backstage crew handed out colorful tickets for carnival games, and Derek let Jasmine choose the first game she wanted to try, which made her laugh with delight. She picked the ring toss, and Derek gave her 3 rings, cheering quietly as she tossed the first ring around a tall bottleneck with a gentle thwack that sounded strong and steady. The bottle lights flashed green when the ring landed perfectly, and Derek gave an enthusiastic clap as the game monitor handed Jasmine a small plush prize that she hugged close with a grateful smile. Next, they tried a beanbag toss, taking turns tossing small sacks into holes painted with smiling faces, and each time one of them scored, they cheered like it was a winning goal in a big game. As the sun dipped lower, orange and pink light filtered through the cafeteria windows, painting everyone's faces with a warm glow that made the event feel cozy and bright all at once. Jasmine and Derek shared a plate of nachos topped with melted cheese and jalapenos, balancing the spicy bites with cold lemonade that fogged the plastic cup and dripped on their hands. They talked about their favorite carnival games from childhood and joked about who would win a hot dog eating contest, and their laughter blended with the band's opening chords on the stage above. When the clock struck 6, the principal returned to the microphone and announced that the carnival was officially open, and students poured out into the courtyard like a river of excitement and color. Jasmine grabbed Derek's hand and pulled him outside, where paper lanterns swung gently in the evening breeze and the scent of grilled burgers mingled with the sweet air. They raced to the dunk tank first, where a teacher volunteered to sit on a platform above a tank of water, and Derek took aim, tossing the ball with careful focus until the lever clicked and the teacher plunged with a splash. Jasmine cheered as the crowd around them laughed and splashed water onto the grass below, and she reached out to give Derek a high five that echoed over the sound of the dunk tank's sinking seat. As they wandered through the booths, Derek noticed a group of students whispering about how he had changed since spring break, and Jasmine squeezed his hand in thanks for standing up for her. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew a row of cotton candy cones off a table, and without thinking, Derek dove forward to catch them, knocking his knee against the table leg but managing to save most of the fluffy treats. Jasmine rushed over and helped him gather the fallen cones, brushing pink sugar from his jeans and thanking him with a grin that made his heart flutter in a warm new way. A teacher nearby called out, "Nice save, Derek," and a few other students waved and gave him thumbs-up signs, his new reputation glowing brighter than any carnival light. Later, they stood by the Ferris wheel entrance, waiting as its colorful cars swung gently in the twilight, and Derek asked, "Want to go for a ride?" with a hopeful look in his eyes. Jasmine nodded, and they climbed into the same car. The operator closed the door with a soft click, and the wheel began to turn, lifting them toward the starry sky. As the car reached its highest point, Jasmine looked out over the carnival lights below, feeling her stomach flutter with a mix of excitement and calm, like floating on a cloud made of lanterns. Derek leaned closer and said, "I never expected to have this much fun with you," his voice almost lost in the hum of the Ferris wheel's motor, but clear in its honesty. Jasmine turned her head, her dark eyes bright, and replied, "I'm glad you're here," her words soft but full of meaning as the carnival lights danced in her smile. The Ferris wheel slowed and stopped back at the loading platform, and they stepped off together, their hands brushing as they climbed down the ladder of car steps. Around them, the carnival continued in full swing, with laughter, music, and the gentle glow of fairy lights guiding students toward new adventures and games. As they walked back toward the gym, Derek turned to Jasmine and said quietly, Thank you for giving me a second chance, his voice steady and sincere under the carnival's joyful chaos. Jasmine smiled and said, everyone deserves a second chance, and her words felt as bright and warm as the banner they had hung earlier that day. Together, they entered the gym once more, ready to enjoy the rest of the evening knowing that friendship, respect, and kindness could make any moment unforgettable. A week after the carnival, Northside Middle School buzzed with excitement again as students prepared for the spring talent show, and colorful flyers decorated every hallway window with announcements and sign-up sheets. Jasmine arrived early in the auditorium, clutching a simple music stand and her sheet music, her ponytail swinging as she navigated between empty chairs that echoed under the bright stage lights. Derek sat in the front row with Marcus and Lena, offering nods of encouragement and tapping his foot in time with the soft piano that Ms. Carter played during sound check. The stage smelled faintly of varnished wood mixed with the cool air from the newly installed air conditioner, while heavy red curtains hung like quiet, watchful friends on either side. Jasmine took a deep breath, running her fingers over the microphone stand to steady her nerves before she gently set her music on the stand and pressed a small button to test the sound. Her voice came through clear and soft, carrying the gentle melody of her song across the empty seats like a whisper in a quiet garden. Behind the scenes, the drama club students adjusted props for their skit, and the dance team warmed up with stretches and light jumps on the side stage. Derek watched Jasmine's calm focus and felt a swell of pride that was stronger than anything he had felt when teasing her in the hallway weeks ago. The lights dimmed, and the first act began with a tap-dancing routine that clicked sharply on the wooden stage, earning polite applause from the small sound crew. When the crew called Jasmine's name, she stepped forward, her heart beating like a drum but her smile steady as she greeted the audience with soft, "Hello." Derek straightened in his seat and whispered, "You've got this," louder than he intended, but Jasmine heard him and nodded with a quiet flash of gratitude. Ms. Carter played the opening chords on the piano, and Jasmine began to sing her favorite song about hope and friendship, her clear voice rising confidently above each note. The auditorium filled with her melody, and students and teachers alike leaned forward in their seats, drawn in by the gentle power of her singing. Behind the microphone, Jasmine closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words flow from her heart as she remembered how she had found her voice when Derek challenged her strength. Derek watched her posture straighten and felt a warm glow spread through him, knowing he had helped create the chance for her to shine. When her final note faded, the room was silent for a heartbeat before erupting into enthusiastic applause that rang like bells across the hall. Jasmine bowed shyly, a small blush on her cheeks, and Derek stood to clap the loudest, cheering her name as others joined in. Backstage, the next act prepared a funny puppet show, and Jasmine stepped off the stage still humming the last line of her song in a soft whisper. Marcus met her with a big grin and said, "That was amazing," and Lena handed her a small bouquet of daisies wrapped in blue ribbon. Jasmine thanked them both and tucked the flowers into her backpack before heading to the side stage to watch Derek surprise, a solo piano piece he had practiced for weeks. Derek sat down at the grand piano, tapped his fingers lightly on the polished wood, and then began to play a gentle tune that he had composed himself. The melody carried feelings of apology, friendship, and hope, and Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes as she listened to the notes tell a story without words. When Derek finished, the audience rose to their feet, cheering and whistling, and Jasmine jumped up to hug him around the neck as he stood and bowed. Backstage, they both laughed and wiped away happy tears, feeling a bond stronger than any they had known before the hallway incident. Later, the principal called all participants on stage for final bows, and Jasmine and Derek stood side by side under the bright lights, holding hands in a silent promise of new respect. The curtain fell with a soft swoosh, and students rushed the stage to congratulate their friends, handing out high fives and hugs in a joyful celebration. In the parking lot afterward, students spilled out into the cool evening air, talking excitedly about their favorite acts and planning sleepovers to practice more for next year's show. Jasmine and Derek walked together toward the school doors, their steps in sync as they shared a small bag of popcorn left over from the show's concessions. Marcus jogged up behind them and asked if they would join him and Lena for ice cream at the corner shop, and they all laughed, agreeing to extend the celebration beyond campus. At the ice cream shop, they picked bright scoops of strawberry, mint, and chocolate, and the neon sign overhead flickered like friendly fireworks as they ate. Jasmine looked at Derek and said, "Thank you for everything," her voice soft but filled with genuine warmth, and he replied, "Thank you for giving me the chance to be a better person." Marcus teased them both with a grin, saying, "You two are like the perfect duet," and Lena nodded, adding, "You balance each other so well." Jasmine laughed and playfully nudged Derek, and he nudged her back, feeling a happy lightness in his chest that made walking feel like dancing. They sat by the window where cool air from the open door brushed their faces as they talked about summer plans and how they would stay friends through middle school and beyond. When it was time to go home, they parted with hugs and promises to meet for lunch the next week, waving as each headed toward their own front doors under the streetlights. Jasmine walked inside her house with a quick smile at her mother, who asked how the talent show went, and Jasmine beamed, saying, "It was the best night I've ever had at school." At his own house, Derek told his younger sister all about Jasmine's song and his piano piece, and she said he sounded like a real musician now, which made him laugh in delight. That night, as Jasmine fell asleep, she thought about how courage and kindness had changed her school world, and she dreamed of singing on bigger stages someday. Derek drifted off with a smile too, imagining the melody of his next piano song, inspired by the friend who taught him respect and bravery in one unforgettable afternoon. In the morning, both woke up excited for a new day, knowing that standing up for what was right could lead to moments more magical than any they had ever expected. The following Monday morning, Jasmine woke early with a sense of excitement about the school science fair that would showcase projects from every homeroom in the gym, and she could already imagine the colorful displays and curious judges inspecting each experiment. She dressed quickly in her favorite blue dress and paired it with bright sneakers speckled with paint from the banner day, smiling at her reflection as she recalled how Derek had apologized and become her friend after their first meeting. By the time she reached her locker, Derek was leaning against it, holding a rolled-up poster tube in one hand and a small glass jar glowing softly with their experiment's bioluminescent solution in the other, his grin warm and honest. Jasmine grinned back and took both the tube and the jar from him, carefully sliding the poster into her backpack while cradling the delicate jar so its glowing liquid would not spill across the hallway's shiny tile floor. Together they strode into the bustling gym, where tables draped in white cloths lined the room beneath bright banners declaring Northside Science Fair 2025, and students hurried past carrying project boards, trifold displays, and towers of equipment. The air smelled faintly of cleaning spray, metal from the equipment carts, and paper from the colorful posters, mixing with the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead as everyone hurried to set up before the judges arrived. Jasmine and Derek found their assigned table near the front, unrolled their large poster board that detailed how they engineered harmless bacteria to glow using safe, guided procedures, and arranged test tubes in a neat plastic rack beside a small black box. Derek carefully placed each test tube in the rack before lining up their handheld flashlight by the box, and Jasmine taped the title letters in tidy rows across the top of the board, ensuring that every letter was straight and evenly spaced. Their homeroom teacher, Mr. Chin, circulated among the tables offering thumbs up and helpful reminders, saying, "Remember to smile at the judges and speak clearly," before moving on to assist another anxious student. Jasmine smoothed out the wrinkles in their poster and silently rehearsed her explanation about how transferring a bioluminescent gene into a harmless bacterium could one day help scientists track pollution or find new medical treatments. Derek checked the flashlight's batteries by turning it on and off twice, making sure it would shine bright enough to reveal the glowing test tubes inside the dim box when they demonstrated their results. Soon the judges arrived in small groups, each wearing official badges and carrying clipboards, and they paused at each display, nodding and asking students questions about their hypotheses and methods. When the first judge stopped at their table, Jasmine greeted her with a polite, "Good morning, welcome to Project Glow," and Derek added, "We are excited to share how our experiment works," with an eager sparkle in his eyes. Jasmine then pointed to the step-by-step diagrams on their poster, explaining in clear, simple terms how they cultured the bacteria on a safe nutrient gel before introducing a harmless glowing protein to make the colony shine in the dark. Derek gently lifted the small dim box, clicked off the lights, and revealed the test tubes aglow with green light, causing impressed gasps and lively scribbles on the judges' clipboards as they leaned closer to observe. One curious judge asked how they ensured no bacteria escaped, and Jasmine explained their use of sealed containers, careful disposal methods taught by their teacher, and thorough hand washing after each step to keep everything safe. Another judge turned to Derek and asked what had inspired their project idea, and he replied that they wanted to learn how science could transform ordinary materials into something magical while also helping people in practical ways. The judges exchanged nods and smiles before thanking them for their clear presentation and moving on to visit other tables, leaving Jasmine and Derek feeling proud and relieved that their hard work had paid off. After the judges finished visiting every display, students gathered by the snack tables for juice, granola bars, and fruit, talking excitedly about which projects they found most interesting or creative during the fair. Jasmine and Derek sipped juice from small cups, careful not to drip any on their poster or glowing jars, as Marcus and Lena joined them with wide smiles, eager to share their own successes and near misses from their volcano and solar car projects. Marcus exclaimed, "Your glowing bacteria was the highlight for me," and Lena added, "I love how calm you two were under pressure," making both Jasmine and Derek grin at their supportive friends. Derek laughed and said, "I wouldn't have been calm without Jasmine. She kept everything organized and knew exactly what to say," and Jasmine felt warmth spread through her chest at his kind words. As the room quieted for the award ceremony, Principal Walters returned to the podium, adjusting his tie and saying, "Thank you to all our young scientists for your creativity and effort this year," his voice echoing off the gym walls. Jasmine felt her heart beat faster as the principal paused dramatically before announcing winners in each category, the tension in the air humming softly like electricity before a storm. When the biology category winner was announced as Project Glow, their names rang out clearly, and the crowd applauded as they walked forward to accept their ribbon, a shiny medal, and a certificate of achievement. They shook hands with the judges and Principal Walters, posed for a quick photo, holding their glowing test tubes high, and then returned to their table to roaring cheers and high fives from classmates who admired their ingenuity. Back at their table, parents and students gathered around to ask questions about how their experiment might help real scientists in the future, and Jasmine and Derek answered politely, explaining with pride how science could make the world a better place. Later that afternoon, Mr. Chen praised their teamwork in front of the whole class, saying, "Your project shows how respect, clear communication, and courage can lead to great discoveries," and the class applauded again. After school, Jasmine and Derek walked home together under a sky painted pink and orange by the setting sun, talking about ideas for next year's fair and planning new experiments they might try at summer camp. Jasmine said she wanted to study plants that could change color with the seasons, and Derek said he might build a small robot to measure air quality around their neighborhood, and they both laughed at the excitement of new challenges. They agreed to meet at the library later in the week to collect books and articles that could help them learn more about genetics, robotics, and environmental science before camp began. At a familiar crossroads where Jasmine turned onto her street and Derek onto his, they paused and exchanged a warm hug, each feeling grateful for how a simple act of bravery had changed their school year. Jasmine unlocked her front door and waved goodbye, promising to text Derek with her first library find, while Derek waved back before jogging off with a happy grin. Inside her home, Jasmine told her mother about their win and how she and Derek had collaborated, and her mother smiled proudly, praising her daughter's courage and kindness. As June approached and the school year drew to a close, the wide halls of Northside Middle School buzzed with lively chatter about final exams, yearbook signings, and special farewell events that filled each bright afternoon with eager anticipation. Jasmine and Derek set aside their heavy textbooks to decorate friends' yearbooks with colorful doodles, stickers, and heartfelt messages, choosing bright pens and metallic markers to capture memories of adventures they had shared all year long. Field day arrived under a warm summer sun that painted the large grassy field golden, where brightly colored cones and ribbon poles marked starting lines for races, games, and challenges designed to bring out laughter from every student. In the spirited three-legged race, Jasmine and Lena carefully tied their ankles together with soft cloth bands and hopped in time down the track, arms linked for balance as Derek and Marcus cheered from the sidelines, waving homemade paper flags and chanting words of encouragement. During the water balloon toss, pairs stood across from each other tossing balloons back and forth, and Jasmine clapped in delight as Derek caught each one without a single splash, his steady hands earning impressed whistles from classmates. Tug-of-war teams gripped the thick, coarse rope tightly and leaned back with all their might, feet digging into the soft grass until one side edged forward and claimed victory to cheers that echoed around the field. After the games, the PDA served icy fruit pops in red, orange, and purple flavors, and Jasmine balanced a melting popsicle in one hand while sipping lemonade through a striped straw to cool off in the summer heat. In art class for the year's final project, Ms. Green invited students to paint wooden flip-flop shapes, and Derek chose a swirling leaf pattern while Jasmine painted bright tropical flowers edged with gold dots. Their flip-flop creations rested on drying racks by the window, streaks of color dripping like liquid rainbows across the studio floor before being taken home as keepsakes. The following week, Mr. Lee surprised the class with a bonus review session for the big math test, and Jasmine and Derek volunteered to solve practice problems on the board using colored chalk. They worked side by side, trading chalk sticks and cheering each other when correct solutions appeared, drawing neat graphs, arrows, and little smiley faces to mark completed steps. When the final exam arrived, the classroom fell silent under bright fluorescent lights as pencils scratched paper, calculators clicked, and focused students answered each question with careful concentration. Within the allotted time, Jasmine and Derek completed every problem and double-checked their work, confident smiles spreading across their faces as they handed in their papers. After the exam, a surprise invitation led them to the special reading room, where beanbag chairs and newly stocked books created a cozy retreat for students who show dedication all year. They sank into soft beanbags, flipping through adventure stories and graphic novels, while Mr. Chen read aloud from a new science fiction tale that sparked excited whispers about future inventions. Later that afternoon, the gym transformed into an elegant auditorium for the end-of-year awards ceremony, with long tables draped in crisp white cloths and certificates waiting at each place setting. Jasmine received the Kindness Award for her brave stand against a bully, and Derek received the Outstanding Improvement Award, each proudly stepping to the stage to shake hands with Principal Walters amid warm applause. Backstage, Marcus and Lena greeted them with high fives and posed for quick photos, their laughter echoing through the red curtains as flashes lit up the moment. The final bell rang, and students streamed into the courtyard beneath fluttering banners, exchanging hugs and congratulations as they celebrated another successful year together. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, families gathered under canvas tents for the PTA picnic, where long tables groaned under trays of sandwiches, fruit platters, and homemade cookies. Jasmine and Derek sat side by side at a picnic table draped in gingham cloth, sharing turkey sandwiches and talking excitedly about their summer plans and new hobbies they hoped to explore. A rustic hay wagon arrived to carry small groups around a grassy field, its wooden sides creaking as students climbed aboard and laughed at the gentle bumping ride. Nearby, a freshly painted swing set invited daring students to swing as high as they could, and Jasmine taught Derek how to pump his legs for more speed until they both squealed with delight. Later, a row of whipped cream pies sat on a long table for the pie-eating contest, and Jasmine cheered as Derek plunged in face first, earning applause when he cleared the plate in record time. A group of teachers gathered for a friendly sack race across the field, hopping in burlap sacks while students cheered from the sidelines, the light-hearted competition ending in joyful laughter. Music drifted from a portable speaker on a picnic table, and a few students formed an impromptu dance circle, twisting and stepping to simple pop beats under the clear sky. Before the picnic winded down, Jasmine spread out art supplies on the grass, showing Derek how to sketch simple flowers, and he practiced delicate lines under her patient guidance. Derek admired her talent and promised to send her photos of his sketches over the summer break, enthusiasm shining in his eyes. As the picnic drew to a close, parents and teachers called for a final group photo by the flagpole, everyone squeezing together to capture the memory of a year filled with growth. Students exchanged phone numbers and social media handles to stay connected, planning sleepovers, study sessions, and neighborhood meetups before school resumed. Jasmine carried a small gift bag filled with her awards and painted flip-flops as she walked home, waving goodbye to Derek, whose grin lit up his face under the evening sky. Once home, she retold every highlight to her mother, from field day triumphs to awards and picnic games, making her family laugh at each exciting detail. At the same time, Derek shared his own stories with his younger sister, describing how teamwork and respect had turned the year into a series of unforgettable moments. That night, Jasmine lay in bed reading a fantasy novel she borrowed during the award celebration, imagining new adventures for both herself and her friends. Derek drifted off to sleep with a sketchbook by his pillow, doodling ideas for next year's projects and humming fragments of songs he composed in his head. Early the next morning, the first day of summer break arrived with cool breezes and sunlight dancing through window blinds, filling both Jasmine's and Derek's homes with promise. They texted each other their first summer discoveries, Jasmine's seashell collection and Derek's backyard insect study, promising to share photos throughout the long vacation. As they walked away toward their separate paths at the end of the street, the air smelled of fresh-cut grass and blooming jasmine flowers that nodded gently in the breeze. Both paused for a moment to look back at the school building behind them, its brick walls glowing in the morning sun and reminding them of lessons learned and friendships forged. Walking forward with spring behind them and summer adventures ahead, Jasmine and Derek carried memories of courage, kindness, and joyful teamwork. Summer break ended and Jasmine and Derek walked into Northside Middle School on the first day of 7th grade with nervous smiles and bright backpacks filled with new supplies, ready to start another year of learning and friendship. The hallways smelled like fresh paint and new textbooks, and colorful signs welcomed students back, reminding them of school rules but also promising exciting events and new chances to grow together. Jasmine looked at the welcome poster for the science club that she and Derek would help lead this year, and she remembered how they had first met after a difficult day in a hallway. Derek squeezed her hand and said, "We have come a long way since then," and Jasmine nodded, feeling proud of how courage and kindness had turned their story from conflict into friendship. At lunch, the new 7th graders gathered in the cafeteria and whispered about the seniors who graduated last year, while Jasmine and Derek took turns introducing themselves and helping students find their tables. They noticed a shy boy standing alone by the window, so they walked over with smiles and invited him to join their group, just as Jasmine had been invited by Marcus and Lena months before. The boy's face lit up when he accepted, and Derek said, "Welcome to our table," as they handed him a menu and asked about his favorite food to help him feel included. After lunch, they walked to the science lab together, where Ms. Carter greeted them at the door and handed each volunteer a clipboard to help organize the first science fair meeting. Jasmine and Derek pasted new colorful flyers on the corkboard, announcing the date, time, and themes for the fair, and they reached up together to make sure each flyer was even and easy to read. In homeroom, they helped the teacher pass out worksheets and quietly encouraged classmates who looked confused, explaining instructions in simple words until everyone felt ready to begin. During math, Derek raised his hand to ask a question when he did not understand fractions, and Jasmine answered with clear steps that helped the entire class solve the problem correctly on the board. The teacher smiled and said, "Great teamwork," and Derek grinned at Jasmine, thinking about how he had learned to ask for help instead of acting like he knew everything. At recess, they organized a quick game of hopscotch for younger students, drawing chalk squares on the pavement and teaching them the rules so everyone could play safely and have fun. A group of 4th graders joined in and laughed as they hopped and counted in turn, while older kids cheered them on from benches under the shady oak tree. After recess, Jasmine and Derek returned to their lockers and found new messages from friends written in bright markers on sticky notes, welcoming them back from summer and expressing excitement about their club. They smiled at each other and decided to start planning a new project for the science club that would involve testing water samples from nearby streams to learn about pollution. That afternoon in science class, Ms. Carter introduced the idea of a community experiment, and Jasmine raised her hand to volunteer to write the plan while Derek volunteered to gather supplies. The class broke into small teams, and Jasmine's and Derek's team wrote a clear list of materials, safety steps, and a hypothesis about finding small amounts of plant life in the water samples. After class, they walked to the art room to paint signs for the experiment tables, mixing green and blue paint to draw little water droplets that looked cheerful and clear. Derek handed Jasmine a paintbrush when she ran out of blue, and she handed him yellow when his brush became too heavy, each one making sure the other had what they needed. At the end of the day, they met in the library to research how different water pollutants could affect plants and animals, reading simple articles and taking notes to share with their classmates. They learned that even small amounts of chemicals could harm fish and frogs, so they planned to test water from 3 different locations to see which stream was healthiest. On Friday afternoon, they guided the science club members to collect water samples from a nearby creek, using clean jars and following steps they wrote with large, clear letters. Back in the science lab, they set up microscopes and measured pH levels, showing everyone how to record results carefully and discuss what the numbers might mean for plants and animals. Jasmine and Derek reminded everyone to wear gloves and wash their hands before and after the tests, making sure the experiment was safe and organized for all participants. The next week, they planned to compare results with students at another middle school nearby, using video calls to share data and ideas for testing more locations in town. At home that evening, both felt proud of how they were helping their community learn about science and respect nature, remembering how their friendship had grown from a simple act of courage. Jasmine wrote in her journal about the day's events and taped a photo of her and Derek holding their water sample jars, smiling as she thought about the future experiments they would do together. Derek drew a quick comic strip of their science lab adventure, showing himself and Jasmine as cartoon heroes who protected the streams and helped the environment. On Saturday morning, they met at the park to practice their presentation for a group of local scientists visiting the school, rehearsing clear words and sharing slides of their data. Jasmine and Derek took turns speaking, answering sample questions, and offering each other supportive smiles when the other missed a word or stumbled on a fact. The visiting scientists asked about their methods and offered suggestions for testing algae levels next time, and both volunteers thanked them politely, eager to learn more. That evening, the science club posted photos of the visit on the school's website, and many students and teachers left comments praising Jasmine and Derek for their leadership and hard work. As week 4 school began, they continued to balance sports practice, art class, and science club meetings, using shared calendars on their devices to keep track of each activity. They helped younger siblings with homework at home, sending short video messages and clear explanations to make sure everyone understood math problems and reading assignments. In the classroom, they noticed when a new shy boy seemed unsure of a question, so they quietly repeated the teacher's words and smiled to include him in discussions. One afternoon, Ms. Carter surprised them by awarding both Jasmine and Derek special certificates for outstanding mentorship, which made them feel proud and determined to continue helping others. Walking home, they talked about starting a kindness campaign to remind students to treat each other with respect and to stand up for someone who needs help, planting bright stickers and posters for the hallways. Jasmine said that a single act of courage could still change someone's life, and Derek agreed, thinking back to the day she stood up in the hallway and showed him what real strength looked like. As the sun set on another busy school day, both felt hopeful and excited about the rest of the year, knowing that they could face any challenge together and that their friendship could inspire everyone around them.